All right. So I'm sure most of you have already heard about the attack that killed 63 Russians in the Donbass. And I just found some new information which really shouldn't surprise me one bit. So apparently a bunch of Russians in Russia, the mill bloggers, everyday people, are upset with the commanders because at this base, the ammunitions dump and the barracks were right next to each other. Now, this doesn't surprise me. From the very beginning, we knew that the Russian command considered soldiers to be basically cannon fodder. You know, they just think that they'll just throw more men at the problem as opposed to, I don't know, being smart about it and treating their soldiers like human beings as opposed to just collateral damage. Because I guess that's the way to win awards, just decimate your population by throwing all the young men into combat. Anyway, so if you were still wondering whether that's the way they see things, yeah, that's the way they see things, because this is proof. I mean, why are you putting a barracks next to an ammunition dump and thinking that this is a good idea? Unless you have absolutely no concern for the soldiers' well-being whatsoever. And these were conscripts. These weren't people who volunteered to join the army because they actually believed that Russia is in the right. These are poor saps who didn't get out of the draft. So, as much as I'm like, yeah, all right, Ukraine, on the other hand, I feel sorry for these soldiers and their families, because they wanted nothing to do with this. If they did, they wouldn't be conscripts. They would be volunteering on their own, not being in a draft. And so hopefully, if they keep doing this more and more people are going to get pissed. So in a way, these people aren't going to die in vain, because they are shedding the light on the way Putin, the Kremlin, the commanders, the generals see everyday Russians and see how they think that they're so important and so great that the little people, if they die, oh well. So hopefully this will be the beginning of the end. But I think we've been thinking this since the beginning of the war, that eventually everyday Russians are going to get just so fed up. So, yeah, but I would love for there to be a regime change. Not from the outside, obviously, but hopefully from within, people are going to get so fed up that they're either going to call for new elections, or someone is finally going to get desperate enough and try to off Putin. Which, I'm sorry, that's Putin's thing, to go after the opposition, and they just happen to fall out of windows. And so, yeah, if somebody were to do something like that to him, no sympathy whatsoever. What's the saying? You live by the sword, you die by the sword. In this case, you live by the poison, you die by the poison. Or being pushed out of a window or something. Anyway. So yeah, hopefully this is going to get more people fed up with the Kremlin. And hopefully they can get rid of Putin. I would prefer elections, simply because I don't know who's next in line in case something were to happen to Putin. If the next person in line would be any more sane. I mean, it's entirely possible that they're just trying to save their own skin by going along with his insanity, simply because they don't want to die suddenly. So it's entirely possible that the people who are around him aren't necessarily that radical. They just value their lives and are afraid of what Putin will do if they question him. So it's possible, but it would just be so much easier if there were just new elections and they just booted his ass out. And possibly exile him, because he's already shown how dangerous he is, so probably don't want to keep him in your country. But, yeah, so that's the newest development, is that, now, I don't know if Ukraine was actually aiming for the ammunitions depot. It might be they're so fed up with the Russians that they're actually attacking these poor kids who want nothing to do with the war and are just being forced to fight. Or if they were actually aiming for the ammunitions depot, and because the barracks were so close, it just ended up destroying the barracks as well. Because, again, ammunitions depot, ammunitions dump. So don't know about that, but either way, you can't really blame them, because they went from, okay, these are poor saps, they don't want anything to do with the war, to you're bombing children and maternity hospitals and all that. We just don't care anymore. So, yeah, I don't know what they were aiming for, and at this point, I really don't blame them either way. So, not going to question that anymore. I believe that's all I wanted to say on this topic. I do not talk about the war that much. Actually, this is my first video about the war, simply because I don't know, it's just such a horrible situation to begin with. So there really isn't much more to say that hasn't already been said. But just needed to point this thing out, and I will see you guys next time.